The Antichrist's empire will target these three nations first. An empire will rise unlike any the world has ever seen, and nations will submit. A single man will lead it, the Antichrist. You will be shocked when you find the three nations the Antichrist will target first. By the time you hear the third nation, you'll realize why this order matters, and why the rest of the world will follow like dominoes. Nation number 1, Israel. Why would Jesus tell his followers to run into the wilderness? What are they running from? And what are they running toward? Today, we will look at a mystery about the end times. One Jesus spoke about, one Revelation confirms, and one that will impact Israel in a way the world has never seen. Because when the Antichrist rises, some will stay, but some will run. And those who obey Jesus might be the only ones who live. Look at how exact his warning is. Jesus didn't just say, "Flee from evil," or "Avoid dangerous places." He said, "Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." Judea means modern-day Israel and the West Bank. The center of the Holy Land will become the most dangerous place on earth during the tribulation. But why would Jesus tell people to run from the land God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? This warning is urgent for our time. We can already see the setup for it. Israel is surrounded by enemies who want to destroy it. The United Nations passes more rulings against Israel than against any other nation in the world. There's more to know about this warning. Jesus knew history. Revelation 12:6 says, "Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." God has already made safe places in the wilderness for those who obey and leave Judea. These are not random hiding spots. They are special places God chose where He will provide for His people during the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. But this warning is not just for the Jewish people in Israel. It is for anyone in that region when the tribulation starts. If you plan to visit the Holy Land, move to Israel, or have family or business there, Jesus' warning is clear. When you see the abomination of desolation, don't stop to get your things. Don't delay. Flee to the mountains right away. Your life will depend on how fast you obey His order to leave. Nation number 2. Takeover of the Three Kings Empire. The Antichrist will rise. But before he rules over all nations, he will face 3 powerful kings and destroy them. This isn't a guess. It's written in prophecy, clear as day. Before whom 3 fell, and he shall subdue 3 kings. Daniel 7:8. Why these 3? What do they stand for? And could we already be seeing the pieces in place? The 10 nations prophecy comes straight from the Bible. It's in the books of Daniel and Revelation. Daniel 7 talks about 10 horns on a scary beast. Revelation 17:12 says, "The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast." These 10 kings stand for 10 nations or leaders who will rise to power in the last days. They will work together under the Antichrist and form a worldwide system that goes against God. But here's the question. Are we already seeing signs of this happening? Let's look at Daniel's vision. In chapter 7, Daniel sees 4 beasts. Each one stands for a kingdom. But the last beast is different. It's stronger, more frightening, and it has 10 horns. These horns mean 10 future kings or nations. That's not all. In Revelation 17, the Apostle John also sees 10 horns. They match Daniel's vision. Together, these visions give us a picture of a future group, a team of 10 leaders who will rise together in the end times. The question is, are these nations already starting to work together today? Let's take a closer look. It gets even more interesting here. Daniel saw a little horn rise among the 10. It spoke with pride and took control. This little horn is the Antichrist. He will use the 10 nations to set up his rule over the whole world. But here's the twist. These 10 nations may look strong and united, but they're actually weak inside. Just like iron mixed with clay in the statue from Daniel 2. Could this weakness help us figure out who these nations are today? Stay with me, because we're about to put some big pieces together. Now let's slow down, because this is where things get real. We've talked about the prophecy and the visions in Daniel and Revelation, but what about the world today? Could these 10 nations be forming alliances right under our noses? Let's connect some dots. Throughout history, kingdoms and alliances have come and gone, from Babylon to Rome, but none have ruled the whole world together. Then, in the last 100 years, something big happened. The world began to feel smaller, not because it shrank, but because of technology, trade, and global problems that pushed nations to work together. After 2 world wars, the United Nations was born, promising to keep peace and safety around the world. Then came NATO, the European Union, and other groups that joined countries together. But could this unity be setting the stage for something much bigger? Something the Bible talked about? The European Union comes up often when people talk about the 10 nations. Why? Because it looks a lot like the picture Daniel saw. The EU started as a trade group, but grew into a political and military force. Here's the interesting part. Some Bible teachers say the EU is like the feet of iron and clay from Daniel's statue. It's strong in some ways, but weak in others. It may look powerful, but its divisions make it unstable. Could this be the beginning of the 10-nation alliance? But the EU isn't alone. Around the world, there's a push for regional unity. In Asia, we have ASEAN. In Africa, there's the African Union. The Middle East has the Arab League. These groups are gaining more influence, shaping trade, and even working together militarily. Could the 10 nations of prophecy come from these areas? It's possible. The Bible doesn't name them. It only says they will join together under the Antichrist. As these alliances grow, the stage could be getting ready for the prophecy to happen. Here's another thing. World problems are speeding up the need for unity. Climate change, pandemics, and shaky economies are pushing nations to cooperate like never before. But unity costs something. It costs freedom. Revelation 17:13 says, "They have one purpose, and will give their power and authority to the beast." Could these problems push nations to give up their independence in exchange for peace and safety? And if that happens, who will they follow? The puzzle pieces are falling into place. But what's the next step? Could there be a moment that forces these 10 nations to stand together? Let's look deeper. Now think about money. Trade alliances are the backbone of working together in the world. But they also make countries depend on each other. If one nation needs another for goods and services, it can start to shape politics and even military choices. For example, the European Union isn't just about trade. It has its own currency and laws that affect millions of people. The World Trade Organization and trade deals like NAFTA have changed entire economies. But here's the problem. When one nation struggles, it affects all the others. Could this kind of connection be what ties the 10 nations together? Technology is another big part. In Daniel's time, this kind of worldwide teamwork would have been impossible. But now, technology is tearing down borders fast. The internet connects people instantly. Governments are using artificial intelligence, data networks, and digital money to make things more efficient and more controlled. Here's something to think about. Digital money like Bitcoin or central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are changing how we use money. Imagine if all nations used the same digital currency. It would make trading easy, but also give huge control to one system. Could this be part of the 10-nation plan, helping a global leader rise? And don't forget the military. Groups like NATO show how nations can join forces for protection. But as these groups grow, so does their power. Today, we see nations sharing advanced weapons, training together, and planning for worldwide threats. Now picture this, a group of 10 nations combining their armies into one powerful force. Revelation 17:12 says, "These 10 kings will get power for 1 hour," a short time. That means their power will be huge, but it won't last. Could we be watching the start of this right now? But here's where it gets even more serious. The Bible makes it clear that these 10 nations won't act on their own. They will give their power to the Antichrist. This world leader will promise peace and answers to the world's problems, but it will come with a price. Revelation 13:7 warns us, "He was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation." The 10 nations will unite under his control, building a system that looks strong but will eventually fall apart. The signs are all around us. We see global alliances, new technology, and economies depending on each other like never before. But what's missing? How will these 10 nations finally join together? Let's keep moving. History shows that unity often comes from crisis. Wars, sicknesses, and financial collapses can force nations to work together. Now think about a crisis so big that it shakes the whole world. A crisis that demands quick and united action. Could it be a financial crash, a cyber attack that destroys major economies, or a massive disaster in nature like we've never seen? Whatever it is, the Bible shows that chaos will come before the 10 nations rise. In Revelation 6:6, when the third seal is opened, it brings economic trouble. A quart of wheat for a day's wages, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. This could be the storm that forces nations to stand together for one cause. So, which nations might fulfill this prophecy? The Bible doesn't name them, but it gives hints. Many Bible teachers believe the 10 nations will come from what is left of the Roman Empire, which once ruled over Europe, parts of the Middle East, and North Africa. But what about other world powers like China, Russia, or the United States? Could they be part of this group? Or will they stay outside of it, fighting against it? These are questions that keep both Bible teachers and believers watching closely. Remember the feet of iron and clay in the statue from Nebuchadnezzar's dream? This picture is important for understanding the 10 nations. Iron stands for strength, maybe military or economic power. Clay stands for weakness, showing division inside the group. This matches what we see today. Nations may work together for a goal, but their unity is weak, full of disagreements and mistrust. Could this be why the Bible calls the kingdom partly strong and partly brittle? It may look powerful on the outside, but its base will not be solid. Look at the European Union. It's one of the strongest alliances in the world, but it is far from perfect. Brexit proved that unity can break when national interests clash with group goals. Now, think about 10 nations trying to run the world together. Can you imagine the arguments and tension behind closed doors? Yet this chaos could be the very thing the Antichrist uses. If he shows himself as the one who can fix the problems, the nations will trust him, at least for a while. The Bible says this group, no matter how powerful it seems, will not last. Revelation 17:14 says, "They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings." Even though the 10 nations will rise, their fight against God will lead to their fall. This is both a warning and a comfort. For believers, it reminds us that God's kingdom cannot be shaken. For the world, it's a wake-up call to notice the signs before it's too late. So, what does this mean for us now? Are we just watching, or are we part of this prophecy as it unfolds? Let's keep moving forward to see the answer. Think about the world today. Every headline says the same thing. The world is getting more connected and more fragile. Global unity is no longer just a dream. It is being pushed as a must-have. But here's the truth about unity. It's a double-edged sword. On the surface, it promises peace and progress. Leaders meet for big events, shake hands, give speeches, and make plans to save the world. And yes, it looks polished, like a well-planned show. But underneath, there is tension. Nations want to work together, but they also want to protect themselves. This kind of weak unity is exactly what the Bible showed in Daniel's vision. But here's the problem. Every time a crisis comes, the answers often mean giving up more independence and more freedom. Borders fade, laws change, and more power goes to global leaders and organizations. Could these crises be preparing the way for the 10 nations the Bible talks about? Could today's push for unity be more than just about solving problems? If so, who is really in control? Here's what's both amazing and scary. The alliances we see today may look strong, but they are fragile. Just like iron and clay, they don't fully mix. Nations may agree on trade or climate issues, but the moment their own needs come first, cracks show. But there's another part we cannot ignore: technology. In our time, technology connects people in ways Daniel could have never imagined. Satellites watch the whole Earth. Digital money is changing how economies work. Artificial intelligence tracks everything, from what you buy to how nations protect themselves. On one side, these things are amazing. They fix problems and make life easier. But on the other side, they give power to fewer and fewer people. Picture a world where every dollar you spend, every place you go, and every choice you make is tracked and controlled. Is it too far to say technology could help bring together the 10 nations? Or that it could give the Antichrist the tools he needs to rule? The pieces are coming together faster than we think. I know this might feel heavy. It's easy to look at what's happening and think the world is falling apart. But remember this, none of it surprises God. The Bible is not just an old book. It's a guide showing us what is happening now and what will happen next. No matter how chaotic it gets, God's plan is still moving forward exactly as He said. What happens to those who try to fight the Antichrist? Jesus warned us. Have you ever wondered why so many Christians talk about fighting the Antichrist? Standing up, battling evil, waging spiritual warfare against the beast? But what if I told you something that might shake your faith to its core? Jesus never actually told us to fight him. In fact, what Jesus really said is so shocking that it might completely transform how you view the end times. One day, a man will emerge on the world stage. He'll be everything our broken world craves: charismatic, seemingly powerful, wildly popular. The kind of leader who makes you feel safe just by listening to him speak. But beneath that magnetic charm, a darkness so profound it defies description. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4 reveals his true nature. The man of sin, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God. Think about that for a moment. This isn't just another corrupt politician or false teacher. This is someone who will systematically deceive the entire world, even some who consider themselves faithful believers. He'll demand something no human deserves: worship reserved only for God. And those who refuse to bow? Let me be blunt, he will try to utterly destroy them. So what's our response supposed to be? What did Jesus actually tell his followers to do when this terrifying figure rises to power? That's the question that changes everything. Jesus didn't leave this crucial detail up to our imagination or interpretation. In the midst of describing the most terrifying period in human history, he gave us precise instructions about this exact moment. In Matthew 24:21, Jesus described it with chilling clarity. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Stop and truly absorb what he's saying. This isn't just another difficult season. It's not comparable to any persecution the church has ever faced. It's the final overwhelming surge of evil breaking upon the world. A time when the Antichrist will dominate through sophisticated lies, paralyzing fear, and brutal force. Jesus saw this coming, and he warned us specifically how to respond. Not with the weapons you might expect, not with righteous anger, not with physical resistance, not with elaborate battle strategies. Instead, with a command so straightforward that countless believers will tragically ignore it, thinking they know better. When Jesus delivered his end times warnings in Matthew 24, he wasn't being cryptic. This wasn't one of his parables that needed careful unpacking. He spoke with unmistakable clarity. He methodically listed signs his followers should watch for: false messiahs arising to mislead many, wars erupting, and rumors of worse conflicts to come, nation battling against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines spreading, earthquakes shaking foundations, persecution intensifying. But then, and this is where most people miss it, he gave one specific instruction that completely disrupts the pattern of what most believers expect to do. I wonder if you're ready to hear what it is. When you see this one event, the abomination of desolation, he doesn't say, "Be brave." He doesn't say, "Stand up." He doesn't say, "Take back your country." He says something that might shock you. "Let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains." Matthew 24, verse 16. Just think about that for a moment. The Son of God, the ultimate warrior, tells his people to run, not prepare for battle, not organize resistance, but to escape, immediately. You know, we live in a culture that celebrates standing your ground, fighting back, being the hero. But what if I told you that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is flee? And here's where it gets really interesting. Jesus doesn't just casually suggest leaving. Look at the urgency in his words. If you're relaxing on your rooftop, don't even go back inside your house. If you're working in the field, leave your coat behind. If you're pregnant or nursing, pray for strength because it will be harder. If it happens in winter or on Sabbath, it might be almost impossible to get away. I'm going to share something in just a few minutes about why this specific event, the abomination of desolation, triggers such an extreme response from Jesus. The answer might surprise you. But first, we need to understand this critical warning. Here's something that stops most believers in their tracks. In this moment, Jesus doesn't tell you to pray about what to do. He's already told you what to do. Think about it. We're taught that prayer is always the first response, right? But in this instance, Jesus has already given the command. The time for deliberation is over. And here's the sobering reality. Those who pause to seek God's will in that moment might actually be disobeying the very instructions He's already provided. While they're praying for guidance, while they're gathering possessions, while they're saying goodbyes, the window of escape will slam shut. Now pay close attention to what Jesus actually tells them to pray for in verses 20 to 21. Pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Did you catch that subtle distinction? He doesn't say, pray it doesn't happen. He says, pray about the timing of your escape. He assumes complete obedience to the flee command. The only question is whether circumstances will make that flight easier or harder. In a few moments, I'm going to reveal exactly what this abomination of desolation is and why Jesus considered it the ultimate trigger point. The historical patterns will make this crystal clear, and you'll understand why so many well-meaning believers might miss this critical moment. But before we get there, here's perhaps the most dangerous trap of all. Some believers will convince themselves they're being courageous by staying to fight. They'll see themselves as modern-day Davids facing Goliath. They'll quote scriptures about standing firm against the enemy. They'll rally others to resist. And in doing so, they'll be directly disobeying the explicit command of Jesus himself. This isn't a test of courage, it's a test of obedience. When we continue, you'll discover the historical pattern that makes this warning so crucial, and why Jesus placed this particular moment at the absolute center of his end times teaching. Are you ready to see what most prophecy teachers miss entirely? Here's a chilling truth that few are brave enough to discuss. Even bravery can become rebellion when it's outside of obedience. And Jesus didn't say, "Blessed are those who fight the beast." He said, "Blessed are those who endure to the end." Matthew 24:13. What if everything you've been taught about standing your ground in the last days is actually setting you up for spiritual disaster? As we continue, I'm going to reveal what the abomination actually is, what it looks like in real life, and the exact moment when you'll need to make a life-altering decision. But fair warning, what I'm about to share might challenge everything you thought you knew about end times preparation. Because when Jesus says, "Run," don't pause, don't think, don't argue, just move. And here's why this matters more than you realize. In the final hour, obedience will matter more than courage, and faith will look less like fighting. and more like fleeing with trust. I know what you're thinking. For some people, running sounds like fear, like surrender. But have you considered this? In the Bible, running is sometimes the greatest form of obedience. Think about it. Joseph ran from Potiphar's wife, a man who chose purity over confrontation. David ran from Saul, even though he had multiple chances to kill him and solve the problem. Even Jesus himself, when the crowd tried to throw him off a cliff in Luke 4, simply walked away. This pattern reveals something profound that most churches never teach. Because the mission wasn't to fight. The mission was to finish. There are moments to stand and moments to flee. And in the time of the Antichrist, Jesus specifically said to flee. Here's where the tension rises, and where you'll need discernment most. Some believers won't listen to Christ's actual commands. They'll say, "We have to fight. We have to stand our ground." And what will they do? They'll take up weapons. They'll go after the system. They'll resist with violence. But have you ever wondered what happens to these well-meaning rebels? Revelation 13:7 gives the sobering answer, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them." Let that sink in for a moment. The Antichrist is actually allowed to win for a season. Those who try to fight him in the flesh, they will be crushed. Why would God allow this? The answer might surprise you. Because this is not a physical war. It's a spiritual judgment. And the only way to survive it is to obey Jesus. But wait, you might be thinking, aren't we supposed to stand for truth? Yes, absolutely. But truth is not defended with rage or revenge. Truth is lived out in faith and endurance. Revelation 14:12 says, "Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." And what if your greatest weapon against the Antichrist isn't fighting at all? It's something far more powerful, something that most believers have completely overlooked. We'll get to that crucial revelation in just a moment. This is where many will fall into deception. They will read about the beast, the mark, the image, and think, we have to stop this ourselves. But that's not what Jesus said. Have you ever noticed there's no scene in Revelation where the church launches a rebellion and defeats the Antichrist? I'm about to show you why this matters more than you could possibly imagine. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the world as we know it suddenly changed forever? In fact, Revelation 13:10 gives us a sobering glimpse. "He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." This isn't just ancient text on a page. It's a warning that echoes through time directly to us today. If you take up the sword in the wrong season, you may fall by it. But there's something deeper here that most people miss entirely. This isn't just about survival. It's about faithfulness when everything is on the line. And what I'm about to share next might completely transform how you understand what's coming. Let's make this personal for a moment. What if you recognize the signs and know it's time to flee, but your family thinks you're overreacting? What if your closest friend, someone you've trusted for years, decides they're going to stay and fight? What if your church community, the very people who helped build your faith, declares, "We will resist the Antichrist at all costs"? What would you do then? The answer seems simple on the surface, but it cuts to the very core of your faith. You obey Jesus, even when it breaks your heart, even when it means watching people you love walk straight into danger. Because sometimes obedience feels like heartbreak before it feels like blessing. And here's what most Bible teachers won't tell you. Only those who train themselves to recognize and obey His voice now will be prepared to endure what's coming. But how exactly do believers overcome during this time? Revelation 12:11 reveals something that might surprise you. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Notice what's missing here. There's no mention of armed resistance, political movements, underground rebellion. The true believers overcome through something entirely different: the blood of Jesus, their unwavering testimony, and their willingness to suffer for Christ. This is the real victory Satan can't comprehend, and the Antichrist can't destroy. Because a believer's true power has never come from strength. It comes from surrender. Now I need to pause right here, because what comes next might completely change how you see this entire prophetic timeline. If you're like most people, you're wondering, if I actually obey Jesus and run, what happens after that? Will I lose everything I've worked for? Will I really be safe? Will God see me when the world falls apart? These questions are completely natural. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what the Bible really says happens to those who listen, and the sobering reality for those who don't. Because this isn't just about escaping danger. It's about aligning yourself with God's final plan before His return. What most prophecy teachers completely miss is hidden in plain sight in Revelation 12. The Bible gives us a vivid picture of a woman, symbolizing God's faithful people, who is being relentlessly hunted by the dragon, which is Satan himself. Revelation 12 verse 6 reveals something astonishing. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Let that sink in for a moment. God doesn't just suggest a place, He prepares one. Not just any location, but a secure refuge away from the system, the persecution, and the beast's control. This isn't coincidence or lucky escape. It's a divine promise for those who are listening. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people aren't ready to hear. What if you hesitate? What if you say, I need more time, or I can't leave my home and career behind? That momentary hesitation might cost you everything, because when the signal comes, there will be no time for second thoughts or packing extra bags. And as we dig deeper into these prophecies, we'll uncover something even more urgent. Even today, right now, God may be prompting people to prepare, relocate, or stay spiritually vigilant. But most aren't tuned in to hear His voice. The question isn't whether God will provide escape. The question is, will you be ready to follow when He calls? Let's go back to that verse. She hath a place prepared of God. This isn't some last-minute divine improvisation. God isn't scrambling to react to end-times events as they unfold. No, He's already mapped your escape route. Think about that for a moment. While the world fixates on the Antichrist's rise, God has already designed your safety plan. While experts debate the beast system's implementation, your Creator has already established your timeline for survival. But here's where it gets interesting. That prepared place isn't for everyone. Only those who respond when He says move will reach it. Only those who flee when He says flee will find it. What if I told you that your protection in these final days hinges on something most believers never consider? What if your salvation depends on relocating somewhere completely unexpected, at a time that defies all logic, guided by nothing but a divine whisper saying, now? Some will find themselves exactly where Revelation 12 describes, hidden in the wilderness, protected and provided for. But others? They'll be trapped in cities they thought were secure, trapped in systems they believed would protect them, trapped in the paralyzing grip of fear. And by then, I hate to say this, but it's too late. Let me be clear about something crucial. What you do before the abomination of desolation appears will determine whether you stand or fall when that day comes. Now, here's something fascinating about this woman in Revelation 12 that most people miss completely. She isn't depicted as militarily powerful. She's not described as a warrior facing down the dragon. She doesn't construct an impenetrable fortress or stockpile weapons. What does she do? Something much simpler, yet infinitely more powerful. She runs, she flees, and she trusts God to handle everything else. That's your template. That's your call. You don't need to comprehend God's entire end times strategy. You don't need to understand every prophetic timeline. You only need to take that first step of obedience. Have you ever wondered what you'd do if everything you knew suddenly changed tomorrow? Most people think they'd be ready, but would they really? Let me share something that might change how you see everything. And next, we're going to talk about what it really means to prepare, spiritually, practically, and emotionally, to walk through this moment in history with unshakable faith. But it starts with this truth that most believers miss. When God says move, you move. Because those who say, "I'll wait until it's clear," will already be surrounded by the beast system by the time they realize it was clear all along. Think about that for a moment. And when the mark is enforced, when the Antichrist takes the temple, when worship is no longer optional but required, you'll either be in the place God prepared or left outside in the fire. Now, here's something few people understand about fleeing in the last days. Those who flee don't lose their lives. They save them. They don't miss the battle. They avoid the trap. They don't run from fear. They run because they've heard the voice of their shepherd. You know what's fascinating? Everyone talks about fighting back, resisting evil, standing firm. But here's what most prophecy teachers never tell you. The Bible says the final battle, the one that ends it all, won't be fought by us. That's where many people get confused. They read about the Antichrist and they want to pick up a sword. They see the persecution and they think it's time to fight. But what if I told you that's the exact opposite of what Jesus wants you to do? What if jumping into that fight actually means stepping out of God's will? This next part might completely transform how you understand end-time prophecy. We're about to see who fights the Antichrist, and it's not who you think. In Revelation 19, verse 11, the Bible paints the clearest picture of what's coming. "And I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war." The one who makes war is not us, it's Jesus. This isn't a symbolic rider. This is the King of Kings, coming down from heaven with fire in his eyes, a sword in his mouth, and heaven's armies following him. He doesn't need us to fight for him. He's coming to finish what we could never start. And here's the warning most believers aren't prepared to hear. If you try to fight the Antichrist with your own strength, your own plans, or your own ideas, you could end up fighting on the wrong side of prophecy. Because there's a danger here. You might think you're standing for truth, but if you disobey Jesus in the process, you could fall right into deception. This is why the Bible says in 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 8, "And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming." Did you catch that? Jesus defeats the Antichrist with his breath, the word, not with weapons, not with a military, not with a resistance movement. just with the power of His presence. In just a moment, I'm going to reveal exactly why this matters for your future. Because believing the wrong thing about this war could cost you everything. Have you ever wondered what happens when every nation on earth decides to fight God Himself? Revelation 19 verse 19 reveals something most people aren't prepared to face. And I saw the beast, and the kings of the earth, and their armies, gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse. Just pause for a moment and truly picture this scene. All the nations of the world, all the armies, all the technology, pointed at heaven. But here's what's fascinating, and what most teachers won't tell you. The beast isn't afraid of us. He's afraid of Jesus. That's who he really wants to destroy. And Jesus, when he arrives on that white horse, he doesn't come with fear. He doesn't come with worry. He rides in, unstoppable. This isn't a fight. It's a victory parade. I'm about to share something critical that could completely change how you prepare for what's coming. If you try to fight a war that only Jesus is meant to fight, you could lose everything. Your peace, your safety, even your life. But if you wait for Him, if you obey, if you endure, you'll be standing on the right side of the battle. Now, here's the revelation that transformed my understanding of end times prophecy. The Antichrist's greatest weapon isn't power. It's deception through pride. Here's what most people miss. Fighting the Antichrist with fleshly strength can actually open you up to the very spirit of deception you're trying to resist. Because the Antichrist doesn't just use power, he uses pride. And pride makes you believe you can win without waiting on God. But you can't. Not in this war. Not in the end times. Not when the beast rises. In Revelation 19 verse 20 it says, "And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone." Did you catch that? The beast loses. The false prophet loses. And Jesus? He doesn't even break a sweat. There is no war for him. There is only judgment. And his people, those who listened, endured, and did not fight in the flesh, they get to reign with him. You're not called to win this war. You're called to endure until the one who can win it shows up. And he's coming. Fast. So what does this mean for you right now? What's the action plan while we wait? Here are the 7 survival keys that most believers miss. Know the Word. Not just read it. Truly know it. Stay alert. The deception will be so convincing that even the elect might be fooled. Let go of pride. It's the doorway the enemy uses most. Prepare to flee if obedience over heroics. Endure with faith. This is your primary calling. Speak truth in love. Not in anger, not in fear. The question isn't whether you can fight the beast. It's whether you're ready to follow the Lamb. Have you ever wondered why Jesus went out of his way to warn us about the end times? He wasn't trying to scare you. He was trying to prepare you. Think about that for a moment. The Creator of the universe cared enough to give you advance notice of what's coming. Why would he do that? I'll tell you why. This one insight could literally change everything about how you face uncertain times. You see, Jesus warned us ahead of time so we wouldn't panic. He didn't want you surprised. He wanted you prepared. And here's what most people miss. Those who truly listen, they will be rescued. Not because they fought harder, but because they obeyed faster. Now I know what you're thinking. But what about when things get really bad? Let me address that directly. The Antichrist will rise, the system will grow, and persecution will come. But here's the counterintuitive truth I promised you earlier. Don't be afraid. Just be faithful. Jesus already told us exactly what to do, and it's probably not what you'd expect. Not to fight, not to rage, not to try and stop prophecy. Instead, and this is crucial, He told us to run when He says run, and to trust Him with the rest. Let me share why this matters so much for you personally. Because in the end, the Lamb wins, the beast loses, and the ones who endure, they will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. You might be wondering right now, but how will I know when that moment comes? That's exactly what we're going to explore next. Stay ready, because when that moment arrives, and it will, obedience, not strength, will be your greatest weapon. And that changes everything about how we prepare, doesn't it?
Many seem to be confused because they do not understand the book of Revelation. However, what if there was an animation showing the entire book? Well, we created that. And to watch that, click here.